they went to bed a half hour earlier. So then I would have this time like completely free, but I don't anymore because they're getting older and yeah. All right, let's start the show. Yes, getting too old for this yet.
Avengers full of glory.
And we're live. Hopefully.
Hello, can everyone hear us out there? Let me know if you can hear me. We're checking to see if Job's actually gotten this thing working.
Hello, hello.
Anyone out there? Can you hear us? Okay, apparently you can hear us.
Yeah, they can hear us.
Job got the hour wrong on the live stream announcement, but he actually got the sound working. Good job.
And the name of the guest, and that we had a guest at all.
This is the RPG Pundit, the final boss at Internet Shitlords. I'm joined as usual by Venture Satanis and Florida Man RPG, aka Job. Woo. And today we have a special guest star, Diversity and Dragons. If you don't know his YouTube channel, you should definitely check it out. You know, I'm actually very picky about what gaming YouTube channels I bother to listen to, and you know, I'm I guess I compare them to my own channel and find most of them very wanting. So I was very surprised when I watched one of Diversity and Dragons videos because you know, there's very few that I think have a really good watchable quality to them, right? There's some that are hit and miss, some that I watch sometimes. You know, once in a while I'll watch a video by Venger or I'll watch a video by Grim Jim, but I don't watch, even those I don't watch regularly, so to say, right? And
check is in the mail, by the way.
Oh, thank you, Venger.
Yes, you're welcome.
Sometimes,
thank you.
There are some shows where, you know, a lot of the hosts just don't have, I think, that a quality that really catches you. You know, a good example of that was, you know, Aaron the Pedantic. He made interesting videos, but his, you know, his radio personality, so to say, was not that great, except when Dolly Pop was there, right? Because, you know, Aaron was an incredible straight man to her maniac when they were together, you know. But anyways, Diversity and Dragons, I watched a video of his and I immediately promoted it on Twitter because he's got a very good radio presence, so to say. I quite like his style. You know, he reminds me somewhere in between Norm Macdonald and like early Rush Limbaugh, not politically speaking, though maybe his politics are kind of close, but in terms of the style of presentation, you know, and I thought that was very good. So I wanted to have him on the show, and the other guys were in favor of it. So welcome to Inappropriate Characters, Diversity and Dragons. Why don't you tell our audience, some of whom might not know you, a little bit about yourself and your channel?
You mean that liberal Rush Limbaugh? I'm a little to the right of Attila the Hun in politics, but I try not to put it in every video. As you say, you are kind of entertaining people, and part of that is, you know, you do kind of want to get some people maybe in the center who aren't quite as you know, who don't see quite eye to eye. But yeah, basically I came from, I don't want to say I came from Comicsgate. I've been a gamer my whole life, but as far as YouTube goes, you know, I followed Comicsgate pretty closely and those guys because, you know, what's happening to gaming, you know, has already happened to comics. I mean, that industry is like hollowed out and done, you know. But as that was going on, I was kind of like, well, you know, gaming, hey, look, you can always do whatever you want in your own game. You know?
Oops.
We lose him?
Did we just lose Diversity and Dragons? Oh crap!
Oh, my God.
Yeah, apparently, yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna get back to Diversity and Dragons.
Okay.
Here he is.
He's back.
He gave us dead air there. That's not a auspicious start, but carry on.
Yeah, repeat like the last 2 or 3 sentences you just said. We didn't hear you.
Yeah, boy, I don't know. Is my microphone working?
No, you froze.
Yeah,
Like,
you
your whole
froze.
screen just froze.
With your mouth
really?
open.
30
Yeah, you
seconds.
looked really ridiculous. It was great.
Oh wow. Okay, well, can't have that happening. But yeah, I essentially just came from Comicsgate because that's what was happening. You know, what's happening right now in our industry, you know, was happening to comics, and you know that kind of essentially kind of pushed me into, you know, maybe starting a channel. You know, when I started hearing about Orcs Are People Too and stuff like that, I didn't, you know, that was no bueno. So I just said, you know what, I've been playing these games for 40 years, you know, and 30, the last 30 pretty darn regularly. So I'm like, you know, I got a point of view to offer, so I'm going to go ahead and do it.
Do you think it all stems from wokeism? Is that like the seed where all the like horribleness like emanates from, or
Yes.
is it something else?
No, it's 100% leftist politics.
Okay.
I see invading it. I watched it happen in comics. You know, I was listening to those Comicsgate guys in 2018. You know, when it wasn't quite, they hadn't quite done to that industry. You know, they hadn't fully destroyed it, but you know, here we are 4 years later. They have annihilated that industry, and it's politics. It's these hardcore trans activists. You know, I don't know. I mean, I don't. The good thing about gaming right now is people have been, you know, for years like Pundit, you know, and you, Venger, just kind of hanging out your own shingle and like, hey, you know what, I'm going to produce my own stuff. You know, so we got a head start almost in that respect. But I think more people need to do it. You know, I was watching the older show with Greg Gillespie, and you know, I mean, it kind of got me thinking. You know, you guys mentioned something about, you know what, it's not enough just to complain about this stuff. You actually have to do stuff.
Damn right. Damn right.
Yeah.
And
You guys are leading the way.
Yeah, with comics, you're right that they've completely destroyed that to the point that I think the comics industry is, you know, like the official industry is about to completely collapse. Right? There's a very good chance that in a few years there won't be Marvel or DC comics in any way similar to what they existed in before. And ironically, the response that's starting to happen is independent comic creators are starting their own product lines and universes. So they're kind of creating a comics OSR, right? The thing that's made RPGs survivable against a woke onslaught is that we already had an OSR, and that allowed us to produce stuff. And there's, you know, been more incredible OSR stuff that's been getting produced in the last few years than ever before, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, you guys inspire me. It's like, you know, I have a couple of professional credits, but I mean, they're 20 years old, but you know, it kind of does make you think like, you know what, I could do better than this shit. I reviewed my initial forte into YouTube was reviewing Journeys through the Radiant Citadel. And I could not believe the gut punch that they hit you with in that. I mean, in addition to it being just an awful product, that initial part where they describe the Citadel is so full of leftism. I mean, even the person who tries to, like, you know, rationalize like, oh, well, maybe it's not quite as bad. It's like, you read that. I mean, you can't come to any other conclusion. It's completely leftist. Now the adventures themselves, I mean, some of them are just as bad, you know, as far as the politics. Some of them are a little bit more benign. I mean, it's all terrible, but, you know, but still, like, that's Wizards of the Coast raising a giant middle finger to just normal people.
Yeah,
the silver lining is that if the bar is that low, you can pretty much just like crap out a better adventure and put it online on you can put it on your own blog. And blogging is free. I encourage more people to blog, but you can put on Drive Thru RPG, Big Geek Emporium. You can make your own product, and even if it's not that great, it's going to be a hell of a lot better than whatever Wizards of the Coast is doing now.
If you just come up with classical story structure, you're already doing better than Wizards of the Coast nowadays, or Paizo. I mean, basically, just find a Shakespeare story, and just put elements of that in.
Drawing from history and myth has worked for me, I tell you.
Yes, yeah. I when your thing went on sale, the OSR, the old school companion, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I gotta say, pundit, I was going through Hecate's tomb. I think I will be able to use this actually in my game, but I was looking at your description of some of the women, and some of the women in this town appear pretty beat. Margaret, Matthew's wife, unattractive and mannish. You describe her. Margaret is
so peasants in the Middle Ages were not attractive people.
Yeah, she is a 36-year-old woman of peasant stock, and she is not the only one that you do dirty.
In a pre-industrial society, a 36-year-old peasant woman is going to look like she's in her mid-50s in our modern society.
That's old crone territory. 36.
Joe.
Why the social hierarchy was so stratified in the Middle Ages is that if you were, of noble stock, and you looked at people of peasant stock, you could tell that they were totally different, right? Because, they were shorter, they had more skin lesions and things on them, they were horribly aged compared to you, right? I mean, you got, the Plantagenets were well known for having dudes in the Middle Ages, like Richard Lionheart was an Angevin, but part of the Plantagenet line anyway. And, Edward the Fourth, they were both well over 6 feet tall, right? Like they were like 6'3", 6'5", right? And this was in the Middle Ages, right? And like the average male peasant was like 5'7" or 5'8",
Well, you were talking about, people looking older than they actually are. Job and I backstage before we were even talking. You don't even have to go back to the Middle Ages. Go back to the Andy Griffith show. I heard Adam Carolla talking about this, on one show with Dr. Drew, and he's like, hey Gary, go look up how old was Aunt B. He's like, I got a feeling she was a lot younger than people think, and sure enough, she was like only in her mid-50s when she did that show. She looked like she was about 80. People really, really looked old for a while. Once you hit 50, you hit the wall.
Well, women will do almost anything to look younger than they really are. So that's a form of modern day sorcery that we've just accepted in our society. But
yeah,
it's true. A woman that's still in her 50s will dye her hair, and she'll use moisturizers and creams and whatever, like probably every single night, maybe in the morning too, and injections and whatever else.
God bless them.
Yeah, it's more notable with actors actually, because in the in the 60s, a lot of male and female actors past a certain age were not like, they weren't desperately trying to look younger, right? Whereas now almost any celebrity is just pumped to the brim with Botox and plastic surgery. So you have like some of these, never mind the women, some of these male actors who are like in their late 60s are trying to pass for 40 still, and some of them can even kind of pull it off, right? And
look at Madonna.
Yeah, well,
Madonna's like 70 now, and she's trying to pass as like 39.
Well, it speaks a little bit to how much we have devalued age and wisdom over time, and it's just a cult. It's a cult of youth.
Yeah, absolutely. Dracopol in our chat said there was no pressure to look younger in the Middle Ages. A woman got sold off into a marriage. She had no choice but to stay there. She could not trade up. Yeah, well, that's kind of true.
We got a new subscriber to Droog.
Probably dead.
Thanks for subscribing, Droog. Sorry, Avenger. Just trying to.
That's okay.
Put that in there.
Spoiler notices are important. So, Diversity and Dragons. Tell us, how long have you been gaming, and what type of gaming do you like to do?
All right. Well, I am a original. You can see it behind me. That is my original red. Is it red or pink? I don't know. Red or pink box. That was my introduction to role playing. Like
The
so many
Bolton
others.
box?
Yeah.
This was the 81. Yeah, 81.
Okay.
Yeah,
I call
so-
it the magenta box myself.
Here,
Yeah,
let me
yeah.
change the camera, Avenger.
And of course, I'm
You can
always
see the corner
correct
right
about
now.
everything.
If you look,
Yeah. So I started with that. But believe it or not, it was actually hard to find like a whole group that wanted to play. So I had one friend who was really into it. So we would end up doing a lot of one-on-one games. And there were two games back in the early 80s that we really hit hard. One of them was the FASA Star Trek. I was a huge Trekkie, back then. We love that game, especially the space combat, man. That was awesome. But then we also played what I still consider to be the best one-on-one game ever, and that was the James Bond RPG. I was a huge Bond man. So we played that for a couple of years, played the hell out of it. And then kind of in the mid 80s, I started to find a few more people, who were willing to play D&D in our area. So we hit that. And then I think, as a lot of people did, I kind of came of age, as the game came of age. Those kids in Stranger Things, that was me. But you get to high school, and it ain't like nowadays. You stayed in the closet.
I think we lost him again. Did we just lose him again?
That was the YouTube algorithm.
I think
Anytime you mentioned closeting,
Yeah, there you go.
People-
They graded him for mentioning
he might have had a
closet.
stroke. Did he get vaxxed?
Pardon?
No, he's okay. All right.
YouTube just blocked you because you said the word closet and then you froze again.
I thought you stroked out.
I don't know what the hell's going on. But yeah, so like in high school, college, you didn't admit to it back then that you played. It's like, sorry, but that's just the way it was. It ain't like it is now. So
did you have a period of time where you kind of like left gaming for a while and then
yeah,
came back
that
to
was it. Yeah, that was it. Pretty much high school. You just in the late 80s, mid to late 80s,
Yeah.
you trust me, you could face some serious retribution. Not like nowadays where they say, like you're bullying, but it's not, back then it was real. But, by the time I graduated college, I was, I was good to go. I was pretty secure, and I met my wife in the early 90s, and, she worked at a place, and there was a whole group, there that wanted to play, and they're like, hey, we need a DM. And I'm like, well, I used to DM back in the day, and that started it off. The whole 90s was, a fertile era, AD&D through pretty much the whole decade, going from like homebrew to Planescape, and then we discovered Birthright. If you saw one of my recent videos, we love Birthright, and that campaign is still going to this day.
Oh, wow. All right.
Did you try Darksong?
No, I always respected it, but it was a little too far off that I couldn't incorporate it into Birthright. I'm famous for just incorporating whatever I can, but it always looked pretty cool. But I just couldn't find a way to fit it in. But
It's gone again.
Oh wow.
Yeah, somebody said, does he have Uruguay internet?
Right.
Uruguay internet is pretty good in comparison. You
What's
just
that?
got cut off again, yeah.
He just froze again.
God damn it! I don't know. I don't
It's
know.
not you. Don't blame
Internet
yourself.
stuff
It's
there.
evil technology.
Before the show, I think he did tell me he is from a third world country, though, Philadelphia. Oh.
Oh,
No, not Philly. No, other side. We're other side of the state.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
I'm closing down every application I have. The only this is the only thing I got going. So hopefully,
your internet is anything about as good as Fetterman's brain.
You're not seeding porn, are you?
No.
Pause those.
Lord Mateo says Watsy is trying to disrupt the stream. Well, it looks like they're just trying to disrupt Diversity and Dragons for now.
I know. Yeah.
So why did you pick the name Diversity and Dragons anyway? Is it going off of Diversity in Comics?
100%.
Yeah. Okay.
Stolen lock, stock, and barrel. I don't know why he changed his handle.
An homage. Yeah, his channel went downhill after he changed the handle.
Yeah. Yeah, he kind of became a little grumpy, and they kind of, I don't know. He's still okay, but not what he was. Yeah, no. Ethan always tried to tell him, like, don't do that. You're making a mistake, but he doesn't listen to anybody.
Yeah. So, do you play any OSR games, or use any of them in your Birthright campaign?
I do. I put in. Like I said, I will put in, whatever I can. I'm actually getting ready to put in Barrow Maze in my campaign, which should be pretty epic. I saw that. I saw your interview with Greg Gillespie, and it was great.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, really an incredible dungeon.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, I was kind of woken up to OSR, after I started my channel, and even though I had a few things, I've been stocking up pretty good. Going back and looking through stuff, and I like what I see. I got your stuff, of course, and I got DCC, which I think seems interesting.
DCC is a really good system.
Yeah, it seems like you could do a lot.
But the system is incredible. It's the system I used to run World of the Last Sun, so can't really complain about it.
Yep. So yeah, we try a lot of different games. Do any of you guys do like a Halloween feature game? I always do that the week before Halloween. We always do a one shot.
I'm gonna ask tonight about the crew, because this is the closest episode we're gonna have to Halloween. So do people do Halloween themed stuff here?
Who, me or Joe?
Yeah, all of you, all of the panelists. Is anyone doing something in like the Halloween weekend?
Go ahead, guys.
Like gaming.
I still don't have a gaming group since I moved to Florida. I need to.
There's not a lot of gamers in Florida.
You've got the Sword and Caravan campaign, but you didn't come last time.
Yeah. Well, I had emailed you a week before, prior about it.
I just forgot about that. Yeah, we were going to play anyway, but then everybody else canceled too. Yeah. So Job's not there. We're not playing.
No, I like playing games, but running games is so much better.
Oh yeah, I understand that. Well, I usually do something Halloween themed in whatever my campaign is that's closest to Halloween. Even though down here people don't really celebrate Halloween, right? But everybody knows what it is, right? So the only game I'm going to be running that weekend is my Star Adventure Star Wars campaign. So I'm going to have to try to think up something suitably Halloweenish for that.
Yeah.
Oh, I think we got a super chat there.
Oh yeah, you got to read that right away. Chris Miller, $10. This is a culture war, and we must stand up for ourselves, or the woke will destroy our hobbies and our heritage. I thank Diversity and Dragons for doing their part.
Well, very nice.
Thank you.
Chris Miller, of course, is the publisher of my Sword and Caravan and Social Encounters book. So nice to see you here, Chris.
He's walking the walk.
Thank you for giving us $10 to thank Diversity and Dragons.
That's right. Thank you for giving us money and thanking Tim. That's exactly what we like.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
What about you, Venger? Do you do anything?
Do you have a?
Yeah, you gotta be doing like a Chalt Halloween special, dude. I mean, like that's the most natural thing in the world, isn't it?
Well, the convention that I just closed out, Gamehole Con, is normally closer to Halloween than this weekend. Either last year or the year before it was canceled, but the year before that, I think it was on Halloween weekend. And so, yeah, I just did like a whole one page of like little add-ons and tweaks to make the Black Pyramid of Chalt more like spooky Halloween. And I actually incorporated that little 1 or 2 page like thing. It's got like random tables and stuff like that. I incorporated that in the last book in Chult Chartreuse Shadows. So now you can reference, or anybody can reference that when they want to make the Black Pyramid more like Funhouse Halloween, like haunted house type thing, which is cool. And I've done that. Yeah. Besides that, I don't usually do a lot of holiday stuff, but because of GameholeCon and me running Chult all the time around Halloween, I did come up with that. So
there's some good systems to do that. If you just want to do like a one shot, I know we've done like Trail of Cthulhu. You know, even if you're not doing a strict Cthulhu, that's a decent system for a one shot.
Yeah.
You know, last year I usually do a true horror. Like I'll do like a Hammer horror, you know, like one with a really rules light system. But last year I threw him a curveball and made it seem like this was going to be real heavy. And I flipped it, and we ended up doing a Ghostbusters, an old school Ghostbusters RPG, which I think they really appreciated. You know, as
like the West End Games one.
Yes.
Awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
I only tried that I think once, and it was several years ago, but it was a lot of fun.
It is, yeah. Great for one shots. Yeah, you can find the PDFs out there. It's pretty easy. So yeah,
cool.
It worked great. It worked great.
I want to know more about, I'm going to ask you something about GameholeCon in the second venture, but first in the chat, we have an important question for Diversity and Dragons. Malachi says, is that a Youngling bottle I just saw?
Oh yeah, represent.
There we go.
Pennsylvania proud.
So, Venger, I was going to say that on, you know, on Twitter and such, and I think on MeWe, I saw that there a lot of the people who'd gone to GameholeCon were talking about how it was really great. And I know that Yo Dano was there too. And so you had a good experience, I take it?
Yeah. The only time that I didn't have a wonderful experience at GameholeCon was last year because of the masks. Other than that, like small detail that kind of had big consequences, I've got nothing but good things to say about GameholeCon. I'm not as there was a big culture shock going between like GaryCon and GameholeCon, even though I live in the city pretty much where GameholeCon takes place, because I live in Madison, Wisconsin, and I have to drive more than like 25 minutes to get there.
Wow.
I'm like virtually a ghost, except for like maybe a handful of people, like 4 or 5 people, like will see me and be like, "Oh, hey, Venture, what's up?" But those times that I went to GaryCon, like 1 out of every 10 people was like, "Hey, like looking sharp there, Haas," and "Surprise, motherfucker," and you know, "Venture, what's going on? We should talk and game and stuff." You know, and people that were playing my games were like, "Oh, hey, I wanted to buy some of your stuff, and can you sign this for me?" And so I was like a celebrity there. And here in my own hometown, I'm like a nobody. But that's not the fault of GameholeCon. That's the fault of people not being awesome enough to appreciate me.
So how many at GameholeCon? How many panels on
what
feminist
games did you get in at GameholeCon? What was the best game?
My best game?
What?
I ran Chult the whole time. I've been working on the new adventure for Encounter Critical 3 that takes place in Chult, and I just ran that like over and over again because it was on my mind and I wanted to like tweak it, and it was easy enough to like just keep doing it. And even had one guy in 2 different games, the same adventure. And since there was already like a Groundhog Day element where the sorcerer, if he looked behind him while he was standing in front of the void that these priests called up, if he saw his shadow, then that meant that the next 3 years would spell suffering and doom for Chult. And so there's that element. And since he was in both games with different characters, he was like, "Oh, it's like I'm in Groundhog's Day. Like I'm living the same day over and over again with like these different characters." So that was really cool.
All right. And how many panels were there on feminist representation at GameholeCon?
At least 5. At
Oh, yeah.
least.
And were you on any of them? Did they invite you?
Yeah, I was the center speaker of all of them. No, I don't generally attend panels. I heard from Jeff Talanian that there was a really cool world building panel this time with Ed Greenwood, but I don't really attend the panels ever. Maybe someday I will, but I just don't.
You'd
really.
know the con's decent if it doesn't have any panels on feminism or representation, right? But you'd know a panel, you'd know that a con is absolutely based if it had a panel on representation and feminism and invited Venger to be on it, you know?
That would be based,
that
yes.
Gold standard of cons right there.
I'm pretty sure I was at a Gen Con one year, and we every once in a while we would take a trip down to the Red Garter, which was a club where women are prone to dance on stage. And somebody said one night while we were there, like, I think Ed Greenwood is here, and I didn't see him, but they apparently said he was.
I'm surprised in the least. You know?
From what I heard, yeah, too.
He's like the dirtiest old man ever. It's hilarious.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you know, his original Forgotten Realms is has a lot more rumpy bumpy than the official version, right?
I've heard he's a salty dog.
It certainly is. All right. So, well, let me take a look and see if I missed anything in the
question chat.
I have an issue. I have an issue if you guys are willing. I think it's time we cancel Monty Cook. What do you say?
Well,
Speaking of which, that guy was all over the place at GameholeCon.
I have the evidence here. Do you remember back in the early 2000s, the world's shortest role-playing game adventure, D&D adventure? Orc and Pie. The Orc and Pie, the world's shortest adventure, a parody. I have it right in front of me. Adventure background: an orc has a pie. Adventure synopsis: the PCs kill the orc and take his pie. Adventure hook: the PCs are hungry for pie. Room 1, the orc's pie room. You see an orc with a pie is the call out text. The room is 10 feet by 10 feet. Creature and orc treasure a pie. Concluding the adventure: pie tastes good. Let's just get this straight. You are to go in where somebody who is perhaps black. Just picture this: going into a room and you see a black man, a Jewish person, a disabled person eating a pie, and you go in and you kill them for the fun of it. That is what he did, according to these lunatics.
Yeah,
I think it's high time. Call him out on it.
Publicly apologize for that one. But no, I mean,
Monty. You're out.
Monty, according to legend, I got Monty canceled back in 2013 or whatever when we were doing 5th edition, because originally he was tapped to work on it.
Really?
And
I remember he got pissed and like walked out or some shit. I remember that. That was like a scandal at the time.
Because he didn't like you.
I had said to Mike that you need to put a muzzle on this guy, because every time he opens his mouth, he alienates the OSR, you know. and one day later he was gone, you know. Now I don't actually take credit for that. That I'm not claiming that really was.
You kind of just did. What do you mean?
But let me put it this way: he left and I stayed.
And the product was better for it. Look, he has success.
Absolutely.
He has talent. I never liked his stuff. I thought he's extremely overrated. That stupid ass, what was it called? Pitalis? That world of his. The book is like a half a foot thick and just seemed like the twinkiest, dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen.
Well, probably the best thing Monty Cook ever did was the D20 Call of Cthulhu, which was actually quite good. Surprisingly good for, you know, at the time, the dominant opinion was that you couldn't possibly run a D20 version of Call of Cthulhu and make it good, and I think it really was.
Well, that's the yang. Do you want to know what the yang is?
Sure.
Die 20 World of Darkness.
Yeah.
Wasn't he responsible for that? That was a turd.
No,
Yeah. Well, and
that's almost as bad as
after that,
Burp's World of Darkness.
third edition, right? Third edition was quite a success, but I think that Monty Cook took way more credit for that than Jonathan Tweet, whereas Jonathan Tweet was probably the one that was doing a lot of the really serious work, you know. It's like
Rich Baker too. That dude is like to me, he's like an unheralded. You know, you listen to him, he's just a straight arrow, like former Navy guy who just pounds out good stuff. I like Rich Baker.
These are all people who no longer would get work at Wizards of the Coast anyway.
No, but they keep promoting white guys, don't they? I mean, Winninger left, and a white guy took his place, right? That Microsoft dude.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing now. Now they're not actually promoting people connected to gaming at all, right? But they're not. You're right. Like one of the notable things is they didn't promote, Jeremy Crawford or something like that, right? Which is very interesting. It says something about the internal politics of Wizards because instead of going and like I'm sure that both of the recent people put in charge of Wizards and the new vice president of Dungeons and Dragons are definitely lefties, right? They both came from Microsoft. They're both, from the Silicon Valley crowd, right? But they're being hired because they're business people, not because they're gaming people or diversity people, Right. And that to me is more than anything a sign that what they're planning to do with D&D now is turn it into something that has less to do with gaming, and much more to do with selling shit on virtual tabletops and generating a lifestyle brand and maybe trying to make movies and TV shows and all that stuff, right?
Well, you saw it in the trailer, with like, oh, look at these cool virtual figures you have, and I'm in my mind, I'm just thinking, yep, get your figure in this pose. Oh, and for $2.99 more, get him in this pose, and then get him in this pose.
All right.
So D&D is going to not be about D&D anymore for them, which is interesting.
They're trying to really downplay the face-to-face social aspect, which it's. I mean, I understand if you have someone who's not in your area anymore, you literally have nobody. That's fine. That's what it's for. But this promotion, go out and find a group, find some friends and introduce them to the hobby and do it the right way.
Absolutely. I've been gaming for 3/4 of my life, more than that, and I've never not been able to find a gaming group in my area.
Yeah, I mean you'll find them. I mean, especially nowadays, how could you not find somebody who's willing to do it face to face? That's the thing. It's the easiest, but also our society is so lazy now. It's like, well, I don't want to embarrass myself, so I'll just go on camera and, just do it like this. It's like, no, man, it's how you meet people. It's how you form actual bonds, not these, fake bonds that, you think you're forming.
There's a question in the live chat here. L says, Pundit, do you think Hasbro will try to buy Hero Labs for 3D mini and custom mini printing to get rid of WizKids like they did Gale Force 9? I think that's possible. I think that you're going to see if this is the direction they're heading, you're going to see Hasbro buying up potential competitors to what they want to accomplish. So it's in the realm of possibility. I don't know anything about that specifically, but I certainly think it's possible. Right. So maybe what we should do now is go to the shilling portion of our show.
Oh yeah.
So we have
that time
to start on our next topic, which I guess is going to be Dragonlance, which I think my bet is that Dragonlance is going to be like the last Jedi of D&D books, right? Like everything else that's been done so far, this is going to be worse.
Is it pronounced Kyrn? or Kyrn?
We're going to get to something here. I guess I'm going first, Joe, but I see me on the screen here.
You always go first.
All right. So I haven't done anything new since, I've been making stuff, but I haven't published anything new since the last episode. So Here you've got, again, Sword and Caravan, Medieval Adventures on the Silk Road. It's doing really well, and everybody's, I still haven't heard a bad thing about this book. And you've also got, it's for supplement, which is Social Encounters Along the Silk Road, which you can use not just if you have Sword and Caravan. You don't even have to have Sword and Caravans to use it, right? Like it's a set of mechanics that you can use in any OSR game to adjudicate complex social interactions, things like haggling, intimidation, impersonation, debates, court cases, rallying people to your cause, all sorts of stuff like that. That's based on an expansion of the 2d6 D&D reaction roll rules. And the news with that is that it is it was released as a PDF because it's only 21 pages long, right? And so it's available right now from drive-through for $3.99 on PDF. But there were so many people that were saying that they wanted a print-on-demand version. And I mean, Chris Miller is here. So, he's talking about it already on the chat. Yeah. So I mentioned this to Chris, and he decided that he wants to publish it as a print-on-demand softcover. So there is going to be a print-on-demand of Social Encounters Along the Silk Road. So be sure to check that out and check out Sword and Caravan because it's fantastic. And I'm currently working on another supplement. I still haven't totally decided on the title, but it's probably going to be something like Heroes and Villains of the Silk Road, which is going to be, I don't know how long it's going to be, but it's my Word file is up to 88 pages already. It's going to be a set of biographies of all the historical characters that are mentioned in Sword and Caravan with their stats and with a bunch of extra things involved too, including by popular demand, against my better judgment, I'm going to have stats for the Ismaili assassin class, so because people kept saying, well, but you've got assassins, but they're not a player character class. Yeah, well, they probably shouldn't be, but if you want them, they're going to be in that book, as well as other things like incredible Song Dynasty China inventions, like their, the earliest grenades and things like that. Those guys were pretty amazing what they could come up with, and lots of other neat stuff. So be sure to check it out. That is going to be mainly a supplement for Sword and Caravan, but it's going to be very cool if you're, it's going to be like a history book too, right? You're going to be able to read about these incredible people, some of whom you totally already know, like Richard the Lionhearted or Saladin, and then a bunch of people you probably don't know about, but that have the potential to be like awesome NPCs in just about any fantasy setting, right? Like Bohemond One Eye of Antioch, right, who is an absolute mad lad, or the Cardinal Pelagius that single-handedly cost the Crusaders Jerusalem. So it's lots of interesting characters are going to get detailed biographies there and stats and everything. So be sure to check that out. Jay Sawfire says, people need their Assassin's Creed fantasy pundit. Yeah, that's true. And hey, since we're talking about Halloween, I just did a video on my YouTube channel where I was talking about the type of campaigns you can run in the Invisible College. And Invisible College, of course, is a cult modern conspiracy RPG, OSR, obviously. And it's, if you want to run a Halloween-themed adventure that isn't about Cthulhu, that's probably your very best choice. So be sure to consider that for your Halloween needs.
Good video.
I guess that's it for me right now.
It's a good video. I watched it. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, Benji, you're up. I just put your Encounter Critical Kickstarter up there. You never told me what to put, so. That's
okay.
Is that over? What's going on?
Okay. Whatever. So yeah, that's coming in January. The Kickstarter's over. Let's see. Obsidian Escalation is the latest PDF that I came out with. That kind of came just out of the blue while I was writing stuff for Encounter Critical 3. And if you know anything about Crimson Escalation, Obsidian Escalation is like that, but different. So it's just like a 5-page PDF, and it's like a completely different way to do crits, critical hits, critical failures in combat. So yeah, check it out. It's $3 on drive-through. still trying to sell Chult books. So the PDFs are up on drive-through also. And you can get the gorgeous hardcover editions direct from me. So, oh, there we go. So yeah, just contact me, email me, message me on Twitter or Facebook or my blog, or I'm pretty easy to find. I'm YouTube. I'm lots of places. So yeah, if you want one or the whole trilogy of hardcovers, I'll give you a good deal. Just you know, get a hold of me and PayPal me, and we'll make it happen. I have a new video up on my YouTube channel and a new blog post that's all about my experiences with Game HoleCon, and they were all positive for the most part. And yeah, check that out. I had a lot of great games, met a lot of great people. It was good, fun time, because most of my gaming these days is virtual. So it was nice to actually get out there amongst real people, face to face, and you know, sling dice. So yeah, that's it.
All right. Hey, while they're setting up the next one on the live chat, RPG Overview says, I want a Sword and Caravan adventure. Well, assuming Chris doesn't get sick of me, that could certainly happen. Jay Softfire says, you know, you people need their Assassin's Creed fantasy fun. It's funny how I've got all these books that people say, hey, this is really good to run whatever, right? Like, and it's always stuff that I don't actually that I don't actually do myself, you know, like that I've never actually watched or read, you know. So I've never played Assassin's Creed, but I'm guessing that with an assassin class and Sword and Caravan, you could probably do Assassin's Creed, yeah. All right, who's next? Oh, wait, one more comment. Dracopol says, I hope Sword and Caravan historical characters have a full range of barista skills.
Man. Hey, sorry guys, I missed a lot of these block chats. I need to set this up to just not block anything, but I don't know. I'm almost afraid that if I do that, someone's going to say some really ridiculous crap or dox Benjer's mom or something. I don't know. Okay, I guess I'm up. All right, still selling Book of Antithesis. Pumping that. For people who had asked me before, I am working on Brutal Blades again. So hopefully that out sooner than later. Oh, also, so if you I also want to shout out my friend James's Kickstarter, where you can get a copy of the Book of Antithesis via a random table in his game. So his Kickstarter is the gas station RPG, and it's just a bunch of random tables for shit that happens at a gas station. I think he was talking about it as, you know, it'd be good for like a Delta Green type of game. And he's got a video on the Neckbeardia channel about it. So anyway, yeah, or you can. Well, I think BloodyHammerGames.com still works. My shop up there, and I got a couple things up there, a couple older adventures. All right, that's it. You're up.
I'm loath to say this, Joe, but my next book review of a product that isn't my own is going to be the Book of Antitheses. It is coming.
It really is?
Yeah, it's going to be the next one. It's the next one on the waiting list. I've got a huge pile of books to review.
Yeah, I know you do.
Stuff to review, so.
I know James alone sent you like 10 books, right?
You know, I had to space them out a bit, you know, so I don't want to do like 10 books from one publisher in a row, you know, so.
Yeah.
But it's going to be your turn next. Get ready.
All right.
Can't wait.
I guess it's my turn. Fortunately, I'm going to be very brief. Right now, all I have is the channel. So if you want to go back, you know, you do me a huge favor by subscribing. You know, right now I'm $5.50 or so. So doesn't cost anything. Go ahead and over and subscribe and take a look at some of my videos. I try to mix it up. You know, it's not all. I have a couple of videos that are, you know, pretty well watched. One of them is on Connie Chang, and you should definitely watch that one. That's the one that got pundits' attention. I also just did one on Jessica Price, one of the most awful people in gaming, you know, probably more than that. You might want to watch that. But, you know, I also do other videos where I do reviews. I reviewed Lion and Dragon. You know, I reviewed a Gothic RPG called Lexicultum. You know, and I did, you know, kind of fun videos that are personal to me. You know, why I think Birthright was the best TSR setting, you know, just to maybe kind of generate some conversation. But that was really fun to make. Got to bust out my miniatures collection. So, you know, that's basically the channel. You know, it started off by reviewing Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel, but, you know, it's kind of evolved. And, you know, I'm going to do things that kind of catch my fancy. I don't want to just kind of harp on one thing. So I'll try to mix it up. So when you do show up and watch, you know, you might find something you like, even if you don't like everything. So go ahead and like and subscribe. And that would be very, very cool. I would appreciate it.
All right, come on, people. Like and subscribe to this guy's channel. There's absolutely no way that my channel should have more subscribers than his.
No.
My channel is.
No, you're producing stuff. I'm not, I appreciate it.
Dragons currently has 549 subscribers, so we'll see how many.
I got 1,000. So if I can do it, he should be able to do it by next week.
It's not bad for a couple of months. You know, I just started towards the end of summer, and I'm like, F it. You know, I'm going to try.
I'm currently.
My channel's 10 years old.
I'm currently 5,941 subscribers. So pretty soon, I'm going to be doing the 6,000 subscriber live stream or something.
That's coming. Right. Keep showing off there, Hoss. Keep making us all look bad. Thanks. Thanks for that.
You're welcome. All right, some comments here from the chat. Ironcaster says, with respect to Sword and Caravan, 20-page write-up for Moroccan coffee beans for the barista class. And Calvin says they better include authentic African coffee. And the reason I'm responding to these two is because when I was researching Sword and Caravan, just to show you the level of research I do on my historical RPGs, I asked myself, well, is coffee something that should be present in the setting, right? And in fact, around the 12th century, the Silk Road did not have coffee. It wasn't a trade good, or you know, it just wasn't present at that time, which is why it's not there in the book. You know, they had a lot of tea, but they didn't have coffee. So that's an actual answer to a silly question. Wandering Mage says, Pundit, what do you and the others think of World of Darkness and that style of RPGs? I've been looking at Mage the Ascension 20th Anniversary Edition recently. Well, I'm famous for despising World of Darkness and the whole White Wolf series. So that's the answer from me. I don't know if anyone else wants to give a contrary-minded view to that one.
Yes, I'll jump in real quick. I would go so far as to say that I would consider first edition. Now, mind you, this is first edition Vampire the Masquerade. I would also include that in OSR. I know it's right on the edge of the timeline. It came out in like 91 or something like that. But if you go back and read it, it's a very traditional and I think cool system that gives you a lot of latitude in doing things, because you can adjust the number of dice. You can also adjust the target number. And I used to do that stuff. The combat was a little, but they, I learned later that they did that intentionally because they wanted to minimize combat. They wanted you to role play and talk things out and have diplomacy more than just like katanas out and just violence and cutting people's heads off whenever. But it's a very open-ended, very, very cool. I loved Vampire the Masquerade when it came out. It didn't start out with this overarching meta plots or whatever that kind of ruin things, and then that moment that they had like a sub clan with like a third eye, and I was just like, okay, it's jumped the shark now. Now I'm getting off this train because this is dumb. But first edition Vampire the Masquerade, I would still run that. I would still play that in like a one shot or a convention game or something like that. I still think it's cool. I would still consider that OSR, but I know I'm probably in the minority. So
We always used to laugh at the vampire people back in the day. Like, what is this, upstart game? But, in retrospect, you're right. I do give them credit for, because they had something there. Now, I never played that, but around 2010, I ran like a mini World of Darkness, not vampire, not mage. It was just the core World of Darkness book that, that they released. And honestly, we had a good time, but I don't like running games where the players are, monsters or evil. I mean, I understand there's nuance in that, but you know what? I kind of like my games a little bit black and white, and I want them to fight against that stuff. So that actually worked out, rather well. And I don't want to say fond memories, but pretty good memories of that. And so do my players, they keep saying like, maybe we ought to go back to that someday. But as far as like, being a vampire and, going around, feasting on people and warring with other vampires, that never really appealed to me.
Well, the problem
You
with
could
World
drop
of
that in like a Buffy and like Angel kind of World of Darkness and still have kind of like a clear distinction between like good and evil and which side you're being in.
Yeah, that's a good point.
World of Darkness is that when it came out, the White Wolf products in general, is that it was the first mass introduction of huge drama student pretentiousness into the hobby. Right, that was something that was a before and after. And LARPing. So many
that's where LARPing came from.
That did vampire ended up becoming the ones that later were, the Forge story game authors, and now they're the wokest people in the RPG hobby, right? So there's a direct lineage of crap that we've been dealing with since the 90s onwards because of that.
I don't know about that. I mean, you can attribute a little bit of that. Like there's a Venn diagram where there's an overlap clearly. But I don't think you can like directly say like, well, this is where it started and this is the direct cause of that.
It probably didn't help. It probably didn't help because but
it's
also like there was good
also
and
got
bad
more people into the gaming pool.
Undeniably. Yeah.
So
undeniably,
it raised awareness and it got people thinking about other games besides D&D.
Yeah, I knew people who were like, "Oh yeah, I role play, but we do vampire. Like, well, don't you do D&D? Because me, growing up in the '80s, like, well, of course you do D&D, and they're like, nah, I don't do that. We do vampire, and it did have sort of an edge to it, that kind of '90s like cool dark edge. But it never appealed to me at the time. But in retrospect, my view is softened. And like I said, I think it is possible to play a pretty good game there, even though I'm not great. I'm not really big on dice pool games. But you can run a good game in that milieu.
I just picked up the 20th anniversary edition because my wife is a super vampire movie fan and book fan and everything. So I told her I was going to run it for her, but just got to get time. I just want to interject here. We got a new subscriber, Alchemic Raker. Thank you very much for subscribing.
Thank you.
That might be one of mine. I recognize the name.
Probably because I don't remember that person being on our chat before. So
yeah, I don't remember.
Yes,
you're welcome.
Thank you for that too.
Comments here from the live chat. Malachi says, "First thing I'll do if I get Sword and Caravan is adding coffee." Well, by all means, do that. Like I make my
product authentic.
No, I make all my products be medieval authentic, but I like for people to do whatever the hell they want to do with it. Like Eric Fabiashi always does these weird blog posts about like mixing lion and dragon with dark sun or something like that. I think always like it's like the weirdest combination. So that's awesome, right? Like one of the things about the OSR is how mixable it is, and you should totally do that. And if that means that you just want to make sure that everybody in the Silk Road is drinking coffee, that's totally fine by me. Don't get me wrong.
Joe,
I'm authentic, and then you can add in whatever crazy shit you want. Yeah.
Joe, you said your wife liked Dracula movies. Does she like the original, or does she like the Hammer movies, or like more modern stuff?
No, she likes more modern. She doesn't like the Hammer movies very much. I mean, she'll watch them sometimes, but not a huge horror fan. I've kind of gotten into it. Hey, Lord Mattias, longtime listeners have been wants to ask you a question. So someone finally noticed it. It's what do you think of the Ripperverse? Eric July.
I got it. I read it, and I like it. It's a good setup, for his universe, and all. I don't want to say it had a short bar to go over, but you know what? I mean, it was really good, and it was just like what a comic should be, just a story. There's nothing political really in it, one way or the other, and I am so happy for that dude. And I hate to say it, it's guys like that when they tell the industry to F off, they don't know what to do, because you got a guy who's on the right, who's African American, and it just exposes how racist.
And he's frozen again, guys.
Uh-oh.
We thought it was over, but it's not. Well, he'll be back, I'm sure. Oh, there he is.
Did I fall again? It's
anytime you're talking about something YouTube doesn't like.
I was gonna say. In short, I loved it. I loved ISOM. I thought it was good.
Oh, no, nothing.
On the live chat, L says, put Alpha Blue on the Silk Road. That's quite the combination, sure.
The space opera Silk Road. You can turn that thing into Grand Theft Auto too. The Silk Road. But I should bow out now.
Yeah.
So,
all right, Ben.
We'll
See you
say
later.
bye, and thanks, Diversity and Dragons.
Yep. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, we should talk soon. Maybe
Absolutely.
collab on something.
Yeah, absolutely. Take
Cool.
care, man.
Remember,
All right. See you guys.
If you want,
Hey, you're
allow
Benji.
just late, support us on our Patreon. You can get the link, I'm assuming, in the description below. Let's see what else we've got here. Oh, Alchemic Raker says, found RPG Pundit recently. Oh, so he's one of mine. And he did a video on Diversity and Dragons right after that. Love both your channels. There you go. Yeah, I did a short about telling people to go to Diversity and Dragons.
Thank you.
Well, not a problem.
Got me like 400 subscribers in a week.
You've now already gained 2 new subscribers since I last checked.
Thank you.
You're
guys. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess we could go on to the next topic, which is Dragonlance. Now that Venger's gone, so it'll reduce.
Oh, surely you mean this?
Reduce the stupid
good
comments.
Dragonlance.
I mean, here's the thing, right? Dragonlance is a setting that is more than any other D&D setting about an epic struggle between good and evil. And D&D is now a product that says devils have malleable alignment, right? Like literally they've said this, right? That a devil could perfectly be lawful good. There's no problem with that, right? Like not a Tanari or something like that. Not a tiefling, I mean to say, or something like that, right? Like a half devil or something like that. No, an actual demon can be lawful good in D&D now, because there's no such thing as alignment, really. That's bigoted if you think that alien species will have restrictions on their alignment. So indubitably, this is going to be a product that is going to go out of its way, and we know this because they specifically didn't consult with Weiss and Hickman at all, right? So when they do that, that the goal is going to be to absolutely butcher the original product, to make something that's going to be like the opposite of what the original product was, right? And what we're seeing on the screen right now is, I guess, not what's going to be the actual book cover, because they always want to put something that looks really classic on the actual physical book. But this was like, an ad promo that they did for pre-orders for people that are online, right? And so for the online people, they're always going to show you just how woke it's going to be. And then with the actual book product, so they did this with the ad copy for Radiant Citadel, for example, on social media. It was all about how there are no white people in the Radiant Citadel, right? Whereas in the book, if you went to Barnes and Noble, looked at the back cover of the book, all you get is like, oh, this is a place with awesome, multiversal adventure, right? And nothing at all about the wokeness, so that they trick people into buying it, that have no idea what it's going to actually be about, But here we can see, like the characters on the cover, it's obviously going to be about celebrating diversity, and it's not going to be good versus evil. It's going to be diversity versus bigotry or something like that, right?
Well, yeah, when I was looking at this thing here, I was like, maybe the Kyrinn is a class in Krynn. Bring Kyrinn. This is the Kyrinn class for Dragonlance.
Well, if they'd called it if they actually called it Kyrn and it was like the Bizarro Universe version of Krynn, at least they'd be honest, because know that's what it's going to be. It's going to be like ridiculous 2022 Seattle Krynn, right? And so
the gender spell plague.
How much are Hickman and Weiss involved in this?
Not at all. They have nothing at all to do with it. They didn't even know about it until it was well underway, and they both expressed their opinions about it, right? So this, I think, was something that they did intentionally in reaction to the fact that they are what Hickman and Weiss are doing is producing a new Dragonlance novel. I don't have expectations it's going to be especially good because they're treading very, very old ground at this point. But there were a bunch of people that didn't want that novel to happen, including people inside Wizards of the Coast that were like, no, these people are bigoted and awful, and Krynn is a super problematic setting, and it's horrible, and we shouldn't allow this, right? Mm-hmm. And they actually ended up having to do a lawsuit with Wizards of the Coast to be able to get their book published the way they wanted it to be, because they were constantly being told, you have to change this and this and this because it's offensive. And according to Hickman himself, they actually did those changes, and then Wizards would say that's not good enough, right? They were never going to allow it to be published just because it wasn't any specific thing that was in the novel. It was the concept of Dragonlance itself that is offensive to them, because Dragonlance is it's based on Mormon mythology, and it's about a quest to rediscover God, basically, and to bring good back into a world that is being overwhelmed by evil. That's the exact opposite of what Wizards ideology wants to impose on people today. Right? That is to say that there is no evil, there is no good, and everything is just about representation.
And ironically, that original what you just described would apply so much today, of what's going on. This fight against, for lack of a better word, evil. I mean, it would resonate, but Wizards doesn't realize that
civilization. We're in the middle of a battle between good and evil. Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. And you can see this in all sorts of stuff that they've already said that they're going to do. And that you saw in the playtest stuff. Like the Knights of Solamnia, right? Like you can basically be a Knight of Solamnia now without being a knight, without being a warrior. It's just a feat you take, So it's going to be the diversity Knights of Solamnia now, and this is like, I'm not one of these guys that obsesses over canon, and certainly not Dragonlance canon, because I'll admit that it wasn't one of my favorite settings. But you might recall in the original novels that it's actually a major plot point that the Knights of Solamnia, they're good, but they're very, very hidebound in their rules and their chivalric code and everything. And so at the time of the War of the Lance, only men could be Knights of Solamnia, and you couldn't be anything other than human, right? Like Tanis Half-Elven couldn't be a Knight of Solamnia because he's only got half human blood, right? And and then later, after the War of the Lance, that gets reformed when the Knights of Solamnia realized that they were being too restrictive, and that's a part of the story. But you can bet, that this book that is set in the early stages of the War of the Lance is not going to be like that, right? Like there's going to be all kinds of black trans women who are Knights of Solamnia.
Oh God, yeah, it's coming. Yeah, I ran the first 4 adventures. They come in the early 90s. They compiled the first 4, into a nice in one nice book, and it was good to run, and I'm glad I did. Kind of like you, I wasn't a huge fan of the setting in general, but as kind of a mini campaign, it was fun. But I mean, it seems like what they're putting out is just, it's going to be so far removed from that feel. I mean, Again,
Yeah.
it's just we're used to it now, but still, it's kind of a shame, especially for the old school fans of it.
In the chat, we've got some bets as to what we're going to see in the book. So L says Tiefling clerics, orc bards, and plasmoid sorcerers coming to 5e Dragonlance.
Yeah.
Half dragonborn, half drow. You know?
Absolutely.
Knights of Solamnia are now required to choose their pronouns on completing their tests and trials on the way to knighthood.
I mean, we laugh, but I mean, how far off is that?
I can't believe they even let it be called Dragonlance. I mean, just the phallic significance of that. They should call it like Dragon Sheath or something.
Yeah.
The Kender, the Kender always threw me off in that setting. I immediately downplayed them.
One of the things that they did in the play test is that Kender were no longer thieves, right? Like they didn't steal stuff, right? They just magically pulled stuff out of their pockets, you know, because the idea that a race are inherently a thieving race, even if it's like this kind of kleptomania, because the Kender aren't really. It's not that they're really like intentionally criminal. It's just that they have this obsession with collecting things that look cool to them, right? But that was already, you know, that's obviously racist, right? And they actually, I believe they actually backtracked on that because there was so much objection to turning Kender into like magical fairy people that can pull stuff out of their pocket for no reason, you know, that they had to change that. But I guess we'll see in the final product just how much they actually changed.
How can you deny it anymore? What they're doing? I mean, they're dismantling everything that, you know, Gygax and everybody else there at the beginning set up.
Yeah,
it's just not even deniable.
Subscriber, I just saw it flash on the screen there.
Yeah, I was quickly writing it down before I forget, like I always do. So thank you. We got a new subscriber, Third World Victim. # You've been lied to. Thank you for subbing.
Thank you very much. Chris Miller says Wizards does realize what they're doing. It's on purpose. Yes, obviously. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. And we're expendable to them.
And I'm betting you anything that they're going to go out of their way to make Radiant Citadel look like it's red pilled compared to what they're going to do with Dragonlance, you know, because this is the enemy, right? Like this is them going into enemy territory and deconstructing it, you know.
It's very similar to Comicsgate. You know what happened when they were, you know, turning Superman gay, you know, basically turning every character either bi or gay. I mean, there's so many parallels here, and yeah, they won't stop. They don't care that, you know, the sales are going to be lackluster.
Yeah, well, we'll see, because they keep, you know, the part of the problem is that there are, you know, they've still got good sales in the books running on the inertia of how successful 5e was from the start. And because they keep doing like I said, deceptive marketing to everyone who isn't on social media. And remember, it's only a tiny minority of gamers who actually track the hobby on social media. And those are a lot more. There are a lot more wokeists among that crowd than among the regular people who play, right? And so what we've been seeing in the last few products is this kind of slow decline in sales compared to earlier products, but it hasn't been, so far there hasn't been one that's like dropped off the cliff. I'm sure that at some point that's going to happen. You know, they're going to do something that's just going to be so bad that anyone who buys it, they'll say, well, I'm never buying another book again, right? But it hasn't happened. It might be, maybe Radiant Citadel is that. We don't know yet, because it's always going to be, you're always going to know by the sales of the next product, not the one that actually breaks the camel's back, because you'll have a lot of people still buy that, and those are going to be the people who say, well, I'm done with buying 5e books, right?
Yeah, that'll be the tail effect. Yeah, I mean, there's got to be people, you know, buying this stuff like Radiant Citadel and being like, man, this just isn't very good. Even if they're not, you know, on the right politically, something in them is gonna know that this just isn't very good, and it wasn't. And I imagine the same will be true with Dragonlance.
Yeah. In the live chat, Vince Snetterton says he's making a wager here, $100 that Gygax's name is not even mentioned in any 50th anniversary documentation. Well, I can bet that it won't be mentioned in any of the major advertising that Wizards will do. That's for sure. They might mention it somewhere in some like obscure little corner so that they can claim, you know, that they didn't ignore him completely, but who knows?
Hopefully we see something with all this woke shit, like, you know, the D20 collapse, you know, where like all these woke fucking RPG companies like Goodman Games and, I don't know, Wizards, everybody else, like, it was just no one wants their shit anymore, you know? Hope.
Paizo, they're suffering.
Oh yeah, Paizo.
They're getting,
it's pretty much collapsed compared to what it once was, but a lot of that was just because of 5e, right? Because Paizo was so successful because 4e was crap, right?
Yeah.
I still have a few fond memories of 4e. Please don't judge me terribly. But
I liked 4e too. It's just like horrible to run a campaign in it. You know, it was a great war game, but like couldn't really tell a story. You know, you couldn't do much in a 4-hour session.
They gave up on it so quickly too. I was actually pissed at them, you know, for that. It's like they didn't try to make it better or fight back. They just kind of went, okay, well, you know, we're
what
gonna
were the
change.
great adventures from 4e anyway, too? You know, it's like I ran the first one out of the box with a pyramid or
it was a pyramid one.
Tower of Scepter Tower Spellguard or whatever. Yeah. It was just like basically just a linear adventure that was horrible. And finally, I like got halfway through and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna write my own shit at this point. This is horrible.
Why are we talking about 4e? My God.
Yeah.
On the live chat.
Oh my God, the view count is dropping fast.
I know.
quick.
Terrence says on the live chat, WotC sales are down 60-something million this quarter. I hadn't seen that, Terrence. Did you have some kind of a source for that? Because I didn't. If that's true, I didn't notice. Maybe it's something very recent that came out, and I know
OGGM did a quick video on it. I don't know where he got the numbers from.
I heard that somewhere too, but I just don't even care about WotC anymore. I used to follow, like, go get their earnings reports and read all that stuff, and I just don't even care.
No, is it Hasbro or WotC? I guess
it's Hasbro, but
yeah,
they have like a WotC version of it.
I'm an accountant by trade, so that's something I'd like to know, the details behind the numbers.
From the Hasbro earnings call. That's interesting. I have to look that up. The OGGM has a video. He's a stockholder with Hasbro. Okay, interesting. That's news to me. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I guess that's very recent. Chris Miller says, I saw a video today that said Hasbro stock has taken a nosedive. Very interesting. All right, that might be my next video.
I mean, they may have already peaked.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the last several D&D books were just so awful that, like, because you think about it, right? The D&D players that actually, you know, that buy the physical books, which is still a very big part of the business for them. A lot of them are not, you know, Twitterati or anything like that, right? And that's who they're making these products for. And, you know, the same people that liked, you know, even like Curse of Strahd, right? Which had a little bit of wokeness in it, but compared to the Wild Beyond the Witchlight, you know, the Carnival one, and Fitzhaven or whatever, and
Strixhaven,
Strixhaven, that's it, and Radiant Citadel, right? Like Curse of Strahd was a completely normal adventure compared to any of those products. And so you look at, you know, the people that liked something like Curse of Strahd now look at this shit that they've come out with in the last little while, and they're like, what am I even supposed to do with this crap, right? Like it's just unbelievable how much they've gone all in at this point on the wokeness.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about our hobby is that you don't really need to buy books to play the freaking game. You know, with inflation, I'm sure a lot of people are going to cut back on the.
That's not true. You have to buy RPG Pundit books. No, you don't. You don't, but you should. You should buy what you should do is not buy Wizards books. That's the real answer here, right? OSR products, because there's so much OSR stuff, and not just me, right? Like, talk about another YouTube channel, right? The Red Room. I was relatively early on in their channel. They asked me to come on, right? And I agreed because I thought they were from Spain. They're actually from Portugal, which disappointed me a little bit, but but it's okay. They're probably disappointed about being Portuguese too. So, but I went on their thing. I did a video. It turned out to do really well, and what have you. And it was a great video. They're a pretty good channel. They're not quite as entertaining to watch as Diversity and Dragons, but they're good, right? But then they've done, I don't know, like a dozen OSR books in the last year that are all apparently really badass. I haven't actually been able to look at them in depth, even though they've just sent me a ton of their books, so I'm going to be reviewing them, right? But it's like, this is like just a slew of new OSR stuff that has come out that is just so good, and so much of it is so good, right? And everybody's saying that their whole wretched verse, they call it. I call it spaghetti punk, right? Because it's very much like the spaghetti Western version of Hammer horror, the spaghetti Western version of Belle Epoque role playing, the spaghetti Western version of Westerns. They actually did a Western RPG, right? And their stuff is apparently doing really, really well, so like there's so much stuff in the OSR to look at. Anything that is produced by non-woke OSR is going to be so much better than anything Wizards can ever produce, because Wizards only does corporate shit. Even if they weren't woke, it wouldn't be as good, But
if I can say,
by wokeness,
I think you're gonna see a new a golden age in the next year or so. In the run up to, the next edition, the more that gets out, even like the average gamer is going to start through osmosis. They're going to start to understand, like, ooh, do I orcs not being evil? Why not? And I think there's a niche to fill there, and I think the OSR can do it.
Absolutely.
Just like Comicsgate did.
Especially because there's like so many people now that are intentionally making products that are about creative role playing. So there's an era where the OSR was largely about just trying to reproduce the olden days, but now it's like using the old school aesthetic and the old school mechanic for making really innovative stuff. And also you've got all these people who started YouTube channels or things like that, who are like, well, I should probably make some products, because frankly, yeah. I've got to tell you, right? That's the way. If you're looking at making a bit of a business, even if it's just a side hustle off of this, even if you get to where you're monetized, I make, what do I make? $200-300 a month from YouTube, something like that, and mine is a pretty big channel by the standard of, talk channels about RPGs, right? There's nobody doing this that has 200,000 subscribers, right? So that's not a lot of money, but every time I put out a video, I sell dozens and dozens of my books, right? So that's really the way to do it. And it's way better than having a Patreon or something like that, because what you're doing is you're producing content, and as long as you learn how to get good at it, you're going to end up making stuff that people are going to want, and you've got an audience that will find out about it because of your YouTube channel.
The only risk I see, is, and I saw a little of this, when I observing Comicsgate, is you don't want to get into these personality wars with people that are on your side. So much of that happened, and it was so disconcerting, to people. It's like, why are we fighting? Why is there this purity spiral? And it's just, you got humans, so it's going to be natural. There's going to be tension or whatever. But the more you can minimize that, the better. Like, if someone's not against you in it nowadays, they're with you.
Yeah, and I mean, the OSR has a really good culture about that, though, and I've pointed this out before in videos. When you compare the so-called woke OSR versus the non-woke OSR, Taylor Lane exposed all this at one point, where they pointed out how in the woke OSR, it's this top-down pyramid scheme, right? You have these self-styled elites that you have to promote their shit for a year or 2 years or 3 years, and then they might promote your stuff, right? And it's this whole ironically, the non-hierarchical woke people have this total hierarchy of who's allowed or not to put out stuff. And if you try to put out stuff without their permission, they're going to cancel you, right? Whereas the OSR, everybody I've seen in the OSR, in the real OSR, the Inglorious OSR, are they're always really happy to promote other people's stuff, and I think that's a sign of a really healthy subculture in the hobby, right? That anytime, like the Red Room does these the Wretched Verse, right? And I don't see that as a threat to my stuff. I see it as something that will mean more people will get into the OSR, and therefore it'll make it a bigger net for everybody. Like everybody benefits the more OSR products that there are, as long as they're good, right? Like if you send me a product and I'm like, well, this is really badly written, then I'll do that. But ironically, I don't. I get sent a lot of OSR books, and it's very rare that I find one that is really badly written. Sometimes I find some that aren't especially original, but it's super rare to find an OSR book that's just crap, right? Because they're usually labors of love by people who actually game, right? And that right away, you might not be an ideal publisher or a perfect designer, but if you're an actual gamer, you've already got a huge advantage over these people who spend all their time on Twitter and don't actually play any games,
Well, too, it's like writers, before, and I would say this is probably true in the OSR, like people in the OSR actually do things in their life. The people writing for Wizards of the Coast now, they don't have any real world experience doing anything original or interesting. It's like, I went to high school, I went to college, and I got this job, and that's it.
They're all communications or gender studies majors, so like they didn't really do either.
Like, did you go out there? Did you work at a restaurant even? For this many years? Did you spend some boring time there just thinking as you're making pizza or whatever? Like, man, I'm gonna think about this adventure. Blah blah blah. These people, they did none of that. They got this political indoctrination. And it's just boom, 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 boom. I mean, my wife is a teacher, and man, we're in trouble. She teaches 5th grade, and you don't want to know what these kids are. They are the most unoriginal. I mean, it's really disconcerting. You know who she likes best? The immigrants that she has in her class. They're very engaging. They want to learn. But like a lot of the American kids, they're treated like babies and they act like babies.
The children of legal immigrants usually come from cultures where there's a lot of family coherence and pressure to succeed. And that makes a different person. I mean, I'm a child of immigrants, so I know that, right? Like it's
her favorite ones are when usually it's women like from Syria, the girls from Syria. They're wonderful. Nepal, she gets a lot of boys from Nepal. They're great. Even some of the Eastern European ones, they're all I hate to say it, they're all more interesting than a lot of the American kids. A lot of the American kids are just little baby spoiled brats, and it's like, man, we're in a little bit of trouble. I mean, I'm sure COVID didn't help, with that stunted, the growth of these kids a little bit, but
I don't want to put your wife out of a job, right? But the very best thing anyone can do if they have kids is not to put them in public education.
She almost 30 years by now, she would agree.
Of course. I mean,
she's one of the good ones. She doesn't, she doesn't mess around. She teaches old school.
Find a way not to put your kids in public school because it's just poisoning their minds. Vince Sendington on live chat has a question. He says, I know this is a rhetorical question, but how large is the OSR market? So I don't have an idea what is the overall sales for the zillions of OSR products out there. I have no idea what the overall sales are. But I can tell you that if you you're very successful in the OSR if you have a book that hits gold on Drive Through RPG, right? So if you're selling if you're selling a few thousand copies of a book, then you're a big deal, I guess, in the OSR, right? So this is small press publishing still, right? And it's not, it's something that you have to keep in mind, right? And there are ways to make money in the OSR for sure, but unless you're doing this for many years. I made a video about this, about how to make money in RPGs as an indie writer. And you have to work at it for like a decade, right? Like when I started, I was making a little bit of cash from it, and then the secret is you have to do a lot of product, and you have to promote yourself, and you have to make better product as you go along, and eventually the benefit nowadays for small press is that nothing goes out of print, right? It's all print on demand, and so that means that I'm still making money off of products that I made 12 years ago. Right. So you're, as you build up a product base, that can gradually become more and more of your income. But again, there's only less than a dozen people who don't work for a big company that are making a full-time living off RPGs. I'm one of them, and it's pretty rare.
Yeah,
James
I don't know if things have changed, but I mean, among RPG publishers for a long time, it's always been a book is really successful if it sells 2,000 copies.
Yeah.
You'll notice if you look at the number copied of printed different books, like the Lamentations ones and stuff, the books he prints 2,000 copies. A lot of other publishers.
You don't need to sell. You don't need a gigantic audience. What you need, and this is where the guys at Comicsgate, you can follow their lead. You need a dedicated core audience. You need to build a small platform and grow it like Pundit has done. You produce regular content, and every video you're like, and by the way, if you don't like where this is going, boom, 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 you have this alternative. That's exactly what the guys at Comicsgate are doing. And, it's successful. It works. You see these channels grow, from a couple hundred to a couple thousand, and pretty soon you see their Kickstarters, and it starts, you're like, oh, well, hey, they made $5,000. A couple years later, they're making $50,000. You don't need a ton of people. You need a dedicated audience who's going to buy your stuff regardless.
Yeah. Judd Goswick says, combining Wretched Epoch with Invisible College is the gaming's version of a Reese's Cup. Well, I think Wretched Epoch is one of the books I'm going to be reviewing, so I'll see about how that works. But yeah, I bet. I mean, it would be my Invisible College is set in the present day, but I have stuff there about the historical Invisible College, in the past, and you could probably run a really good campaign using Wretched Epoch of the Invisible College in the Belle Epoque era. Alchemic Raker says, the terrible content of Radiant Citadel and the gutted worlds of Ravenloft and Dragonlance, it's a sign of the void of purpose in the writers' lives. Yeah, well, it's also a sign that nowadays, and you can really see this in the last several projects, everything from Candlekeep onwards, every book that they've now been coming out with are basically make work projects for a tiny cabal of people. You look at Radiant Citadel, the writer credits there, and they have 27 people have writing credits in Radiant Citadel, and hardly any of them. There's one or two that have multiple RPG design credits, right? And then you have several people whose regular job is, if that is a regular job, in between whatever else they're doing, their writing credits are for writing cookbooks, right? And some of them have admitted, I got to work on this product even though I've never done anything in RPGs and barely know how to play D&D, because I'm a friend of Adjit George, and Adjit George himself was a diversity hire, right? So this is
you want to know something odd? That cookbook, that was one of the better adventures in the book.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. I mean, objectively, it was. I mean, it wasn't good. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, the stuff by the so-called, experienced writers, terrible.
Vince Netterton says, pundit, so OSR content creators are starving artists. Well, I think most OSR content creators are people who have a regular job, or some of them might be retired, that are, doing this mostly because they really want to contribute to the hobby and maybe as a little bit of a side gig, but it's not really something that it's income that they rely on. And I have to say, I'm certainly not a starving artist. I'm now at the point where I make more money every month than I would ever, I have a pretty simple lifestyle, but I'm making more money than I would ever need to spend, So Chris Miller says, and this is you heard it here first, folks, although I already knew about this, He says, Matt Scribes Games is going to try to publish an old school style gaming magazine to compete with the few mags out there that are super woke. So stay tuned for that. I've already told Chris that I'd be open to doing a few articles in that gaming magazine. So there you are. We'll see how it goes. Judd Gossick said, Comicsgate has a lot of great ideas that the OSR could borrow and vice versa. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing some of that, right? Like, I mean, the Wretched verse is clearly inspired by the Rippaverse, and on the other hand, you know, Comicsgate's whole deal of indie publishing in a way is, I don't know if it was directly inspired by, but it's imitating what the OSR had already been doing, you know.
Hey, Greg Gillespie's here. He said, "Hey, fellas." Hey, Greg.
Hey, Greg.
Thanks for dropping in.
Wandering Mage says, Divergency and Dragon, you definitely need to make more Birthright videos.
I don't want to bore people with them, but that won't be the first one. I'll pepper them in here and there. You know, you got to know your audience, you know, and yeah, it's definitely like I said, I got a 30-year, you know, campaign, so it's
sure,
it's definitely yeah.
And maybe stuff to, you know, gaming stuff to talk about.
Yep.
Jacobin says the cookbook adventure is not as bad as a Monty cookbook.
yeah, I would agree. Never liked that guy.
With lifestyle brands, everything has a cookbook. Well, I bet you anything, given that now the fact that now a large number of supposed game designers for Wizards are actually cookbook writers, that sooner or later they're going to do like a D&D cookbook, and it's going to be just ridiculous shit, you know. But
I did some research on that cookbook person, and I think she's from Venezuela, and I'm like, ooh, you know, maybe if she escaped, you know, maybe we're dealing with someone who's secretly based. Not the case.
No.
Yeah, but
no.
You know what? I will say she didn't. Her timeline isn't like full of like leftist nonsense. It's literally like all food. I mean, there's no gaming in it, which makes you wonder.
Pundit, speaking of lifestyle brands, I got my
the Barrow Maze.
Oh yeah, I gotta get one
Barrow
of those.
Maze lifestyle brand T-shirt.
I'm looking forward to running that.
It's with logos in them because I'm an adult, but that's if I did, I'd get a Barrow Maze one. Lynch85 says, and to me, you live in Uruguay, one of the most expensive countries to live in South America. That's true. It is one of the most expensive countries to live in South America. It's still certainly cheaper than if you live in, you know, a big city in the United States. But yeah, it's not as cheap, because people sometimes think, oh, well, yeah, sure, Pundit can make a living because he lives in Uruguay, and, you know, his rent is probably, you know, 4 pesos or something like that. You know, that's not really the case. Anyways, I don't rent. I own. I bought a house with my RPG money.
Good man.
RPG Overview says, Greg, you putting my video on your drive-through page for Barrow Maze has brought me so many subscribers over the years, so thanks a bunch. L says, Judd, yes, OSR is peddling hate. People say don't buy TSR so Hasbro doesn't get money, but you have to buy Hasbro to get any of the adventures. No, you don't. You don't need to buy Hasbro adventures. They're crap. There's way better things you can buy. Buy the Old School Companion 2. It has 26 adventures, and any one of them is better than any of the adventures in Radiant Citadel or Candlekeep.
Right, we're probably going to wrap up soon, guys. So if anyone has any questions in the chat, you should get them in as quick as you can.
Alchemic Raker says, the Birthright video was interesting. I'd be interested also in reviews of rules that are useful for subbing into other games, as I presume you've done in your 30-year game. Yeah, that would be a good topic for a.
I'm going to do one of those this week. It's not going to. You're going to look at it and you're going to go, what is this guy smoking? But I assure you, it is fun as hell. So stay tuned this week. That's a good hook for you guys to subscribe. But yeah, I will have a video on a mechanic you can use in your game, face-to-face game.
That's absolutely one of the features of the OSR. And in my games, I do that all the time. You know, and anytime I'm I'm running any of my games, whether it's, currently I'm running World of the Last Sun, I'm running a Star Wars campaign using Star Adventurer, and I'm running Sword and Caravan, and I'm running, what is the other thing I'm running? I'm running a Lion and Dragon campaign, and I'm constantly referring to other people's OSR books when if I think, I could use this table, or I could use this thing from here, or this monster, and that's really the way to do it.
Why create when you can steal stuff? I mean, seriously, there's nothing wrong with that.
RPG Overview says, I still want the Dark Albion Lion Dragon cookbook. Well, RPG Overviews, if you look it up, there are cookbooks about like medieval recipes, and that would be that would be the Lion and Dragon cookbook, right? I don't need to write that. Somebody else has already done it. Just make sure it's actual medieval recipes and not like Ren Fair recipes or something like that. Like there were no medieval corn dogs.
Ye old turkey leg.
Yeah. Malachi says, Diversity and Dragons didn't want to tangent too much earlier, but PA proud here too.
Represent.
I do feel sorry for you guys having to choose between either Fetterman or Dr. Oz. One is definitely the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. But what can you do?
What is it with the Democrats running vegetables for positions now? It's ridiculous.
What I hate that the GOP isn't even bringing up that this dude pulled a shotgun on a black jogger who happened to be running by when there was like a police alert. I mean, hardly anybody knows this, but Fetterman went out and literally put a shotgun to a young black guy, and the media won't cover it. It's 100% true. Go look it up.
Crazy. John Fraser says, RPG Pundit should write The Return of the Queen Meatball. I don't really, my cats show up in my video whenever my cat now, I used to have two, now I have one. She shows up whenever she wants to, and I never make her be in one of my videos, and she doesn't really feature in my games, although I did have in my Last Sun, you can see it, if you go to the Build the Elves channel, we have the audio of my Last Sun games, and there was once a giant monster named Groot Chungus, who was obviously just a giant version of Big Chungus.
R.I.P.
Yeah. RPG Overview says, Pundit, do you ever think of writing a mega dungeon? No. Dungeons are not really my forte. I'll be the first to admit that, I've done a few things that are dungeon-esque for Lion and Dragon, right? So like Hecate's Tomb, which Diversity and Dragons mentioned before, it has a dungeon. And the Tower of the Mad Astrologer is basically a medieval tower with a lot of kind of dungeon-esque elements to it, But, in my own adventuring, I don't tend to make my own dungeons. A lot of my adventures don't have dungeons. Job can testify to that. And when I do use dungeons, which I do, obviously in Last Sun, like recently my Last Sun group has been going through a heavily modified version of Tonnesborg because it's a great dungeon, but obviously adapted to the Last Sun wackiness. But I don't, I'm not great at doing dungeons myself, and the type of adventures that I come up with myself don't usually tend to be about dungeons. So, dungeon crawling is something that we do incidentally in my campaigns.
Plus, you got Greg Gillespie, right?
Yeah, Greg. I ran, when I was in the original Dark Albion campaign, I ran a very heavily modified version of Barrow Maze, and it was all of my players of that campaign agreed that was pretty much the best dungeon that they'd been in that campaign. Again, it wasn't a campaign that, maybe 1 out of every 10 adventures was a dungeon, right? And everything else was, other stuff, intrigue and war and exploration, overland travel, and, lots of investigating weird events and weird cults and things like that, which is kind of my specialty. Buy Cults of Chaos. It's the best generator for evil NPC groups that you're ever going to find. But they really loved that dungeon. A lot of F's for Big Chungus. Thank you, guys. And RPG Overview says, I need a Lion and Dragon Pundit plus Gillespie collab mega dungeon. Malachi says, check out Taunisborg on Kickstarter. Yeah, I don't know if you guys know, but I did a review of Taunisborg on my channel, and at the end of that review, I said, you know what? This is the where I give you guys the curveball. You can't buy this book anymore. It's not available, unless you buy it used for like $400. And apparently, there was so much of a hue and cry about that Secrets of Blackmoor decided to do a new printing of Taunisborg. So you have to get Taunisborg. It's an incredible product. Check out my review of Taunisborg in my channel, and you'll see why. It's really great.
Cool.
All right. I guess we're wrapping up here. So thank you again for coming to the show, Diversity and Dragons. Everybody,
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
subscribe to his channel because it is really worthwhile. Oh, you've since we've started, you've gained a total of 5 subscribers, so that's not bad. That's a start.
I love everyone.
There you go. Malachi says, check out Pundit's video on, I'm guessing about Taunisborg. I want it for the historical stuff in it. Yeah, Taunisborg is a dungeon that was designed before the first D&D box set ever came out, so it's very interesting. Charles Anderson says, can you recommend some good sci-fi RPGs that aren't based on an existing franchise like Star Wars? I'm looking for hard sci-fi or space opera or something that's both. Well, if what you want is a really good rule set, check out Star Adventurer. Star Adventurer is a space opera OSR rule set. It's a small product. It's only, I think it's like $9.99 in print. Check it out. Sadwings Raging says, drop the link, Pundit. Do you mean the link to my review of Taunisborg? I'll see if I can find it before we finish here. Where the heck is that? Oh, here we go. Get shareable link. I just don't know if my link will be able to work here, but I'll try to put it on. Well, I just posted. I don't know if anyone can see it or not, because sometimes they don't like YouTube doesn't like people posting links on live chats. Can you guys see it? Oh, diversity's link. Okay, yeah, we could do that too. Well, no, that's in the description. The diversity,
notes right at the top.
Diversity and Dragons channel. You look at the description of the live stream. It's down there. Diversity and Dragons Twitter and his channel are both on the description.
Yep. Much appreciated.
There you go. All right. So our next program, barring anything unexpected, should be, if I'm not mistaken, on the 20th of November. So be sure to check us out in 4 weeks. And thank you, everybody, for coming. And again, thanks again, Diversity and Dragons.
I had a great time, guys. Anytime. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Pleasure was all ours. Thank you.
All right, guys, take care.
See you guys.